The Renault UE Chenillette was a light-tracked armoured carrier and prime mover produced by France between 1932 and 1940. In 1930 the French Infantry decided to develop a light armoured vehicle able to tow and supply small cannon and mortars. In 1931 the Renault company was given the contract for production of its Renault UE, combined with the Renault UK trailer. In 1937, from a number of competitors, the Renault UE2 was chosen as an improved type for large-scale production. Of both types combined, over 5,000 were built, including licensed production in Romania, and they were part of the standard equipment of all French infantry divisions. Most Renault UE vehicles in French service were unarmed. Those in 1940 captured by Germany were used for a variety of purposes, including being armed with machine guns, anti-tank guns and rocket artillery. Development. Since 1922 it had been the policy of the French infantry to mechanize as many units as possible. Budgetary restraints made it unrealistic to fully equip them with armored personnel carriers, but the mass production of smaller armored vehicles, in the roles of munition and supply carrier and weapon carrier for machine guns and mortars, seemed feasible. For some years the decision to produce these types was delayed, but after in 1929 an experiment with an automotive trailer guided by a walking soldier had completely failed, it was decided to develop a single vehicle for both missions. In the spring of 1930 several possibilities were considered, among them a standard 3.5-ton truck and the existing Citroën K-Gressa half-tracks. Brandt, as such an arms producer having no experience in vehicle development, had already started cooperation with the British Vickers Company to build a weapon carrier for its Brandt Model 1927 mortar. It proposed to produce the British Carden Loyd Mark VI carrier under license and presented a smaller and a larger vehicle, together with matching trailers imported from Britain, for the supply and weapon carrier task respectively. On the 24th of July 1930 the commissioned Vincennes rejected the truck and half-tracks as being too heavy and opted after some satisfactory testing for the smaller weapon carrier of the Vickers type. On the 7th of October it was decided to develop such a vehicle under the name of Type N. Orders for prototypes were in December 1930 made with 3 companies, Renault, Citroën and Brandt. Renault, however, indicated he had no intention to pay license rights, unless the French state would fully compensate him. The 3 companies were thus invited to build a similar vehicle, not an exact copy. The orders were for armored tractors and matching track trailers and for a heavier trailer to carry again the tractor, to be pulled by a truck while the smaller trailer trailed behind. In the summer of 1931 the prototypes were ready for trials. Citroën had received orders for 6 tractor prototypes, 3 fully tracked vehicles and 3 of the half-track type. The first prototype to be ready, not at all resembling the Carden Loyd carrier, was in the form of a very small half-track fitted with a K-Gressa track and manned by only a driver protected by an armored hood with vision slits, sitting on the left side of the vehicle, with the engine to his right. Only the nose of the vehicle was armored. It was presented to the commissioned Vincennes on the 24th of July 1931 and tested till the 29th of July. The commission noted that the cooling system failed and that there was no possibility to decouple the trailer from inside the driver's cabin. On the 31st of July the other 2 half-tracks were delivered together with the first 2 trailers. The material was rejected as being too vulnerable. Citroën discontinued the development of the fully tracked vehicles but rebuilt one of the half-tracks prototypes into the prototype of the larger, armoured Citroën K-Gressa P28 half-track, 50 of which would be built. On 10 and 17 December 1930, Brandt had obtained an order for 6 complete sets, tractor, trailer and tractor-carrying trailer. To honor its commitments to Vickers, it let the trailers and 1 tractor be built in Britain. To conform to the idea of production in France, Brandt delegated the task to build a new tractor type to the Lattle company, as it had too little experience itself. The Lattle prototype, presented on 7 August 1931, was very much on lines of the British type and strongly resembled the later Universal Carrier. Fully tracked and with most of the vehicle covered by an open rectangular superstructure to ensure as large a carrying capacity as possible. Only a small driver's and engine section on the front was armored on top. On 17 July the Commission considered the type ready for troop trials. The first prototype to be ready was that of Renault, that also had received orders for 6 sets. It was tested between 15 and 23 April 1930. Certain defects were found and remedied, after which the prototype was again tested from 3 June. A second prototype, fitted with a rubber track, was tested between 28 April and 12 May. This other track type was shown to be too weak. The project had as factory designation Renault UE, a chronological letter code without further meaning. The smaller trailer was the Renault UK. The Vickers suspension with double track guides was imitated. For Renault, this new suspension type that he patented, despite its obvious Vickers ancestry, offered the solution for severe problems he had experienced trying to adapt his existing suspension models, using single-track guides, to a high-velocity vehicle without increasing the chance that the track would be thrown at higher speeds. Renault hoped to further develop the UE into a light tank by adding a turret. Accordingly, the hull resembled a tank chassis rather than a dedicated supply vehicle. In October 1931, the Conseil Consultatif de l'Armement, under strong pressure by the infantry to reach a quick decision, chose the Renault vehicle for production, even though the trial process hadn't been completed. On 9 December, an order of 50 was made for the Chenillette, a ravitaillement infantry model 1931R. On 26 March 1932, a pre-series of 50 tractor-carrying trailers was ordered. The first was delivered in June. Further orders followed, mass production commencing in the second half of 1934. The series vehicles differed from the first in having a towing sign plate fitted on the top, new towing hooks and an elongated stowage box on the left side. Orders reached a total of 793 on 1 January 1936 and of about 1,200 by June 1936, 700 of which had been delivered by June 1936, 920 by October 1936, 976 on 1 January 1937. In December 1936, the military branch of Renault was nationalized as the AMX company, which continued production to a total of about 2,200, later joined by Berlier, which would build another 100, and Fugger, which would produce 300 for a total for the Model 31 of about 2,600. Description: the Chenillette, a tractor blindé as Renault preferred to call it, is indeed a very small vehicle, just 280 centimeters long, 174 centimeters wide, and having its highest point at 125 centimeters. The roof is only 103 centimeters high. Its cargo carrying capacity is rather limited. There is a rectangular armored bin at the back, 145 centimeters long, 60 centimeters wide and 36 centimeters high, able to to hold a load of about 350 kilograms. Unloading is made easier by the possibility to tilt the bin. The back plate then hinges downwards, forming a slope on which cargo can slide to the ground. The main cargo is carried by the tracked trailer, a close copy of the British type, with a length of its bin of again 145 centimeters, a width of 110 centimeters and a height of 35 centimeters, weighing itself 775 kilograms. It can hold a load of about 600 kilograms, whereas the specification had asked for only 400 kilograms. The tracks can be removed for road transport. There are 2 road wheels per side. The bin forms the back compartment of the vehicle. The larger front compartment is for the crew and engine. The 4-cylinder 38-horsepower engine is positioned in the center, with the driver to its left and the commander to its right. The gearbox, differential and transmission are placed in front of the engine. These mechanical parts are placed under 2 projections on the otherwise very steeply sloped armor of the glacis. These can be retracted for maintenance of the mechanical parts. Each crew member, sitting below a hatch that is the only way of entrance or exit, has a fuel tank behind its seat, together having a total capacity of 56 liters, allowing for a range of 100 kilometers. The exhaust pipe runs in front of the commander to the right, ending in a silencer on the right side of the vehicle. In later production vehicles, an armored cover was added, as it tended to overheat. A later variant of this cover had cooling slits. To reduce the height of the vehicle, it has been made impossible for the crew members to retract the heads under the roof. To protect these vital parts, 2 hemispherical armored hoods have been fitted. These have vision slits, but to improve the field of vision, the front section of these hoods can, like a visor, be pivoted backwards over the back section, as otherwise a bar between the roof and the glacis would have hindered entrance. The forward hinging glacis hatches have an extension forming the roof section that fits around the front part of the hood. If the hood is retracted and the hatch opened, a larger entry space is thus available. An interesting feature of the vehicle is the internal communication system used. When the hoods are closed, the 2 crewmen, separated by the engine between them, cannot directly communicate. Neither internal nor external radio communications are possible, as there are simply no radio sets fitted. A system of white, blue, green and red lights that can be made to shine continuously or flicker is used by the commander to direct the driver when buttoned up, based on a predetermined signal code. Forward, continuous white light. To the left, continuous blue light. To the right, continuous green light. Backwards, flickering white light. Slow down, flickering red light. Stop, continuous red light. Decouple the trailer, alternating white and red light. Tilt the bin, alternating green and white light. The suspension system closely resembles the Vickers type. There are 18.4 cm wide tracks with 131 small links and 3 bogies per side, sprung by small leaf springs, carry each 2 small road wheels. The prototype had an armored plate protecting this assembly, but it was omitted on the production vehicles to save weight, leaving only 2 elongated beams to brace the whole. Likewise, the sprocket was simplified. The prototypes had been a closed disc. The production type had 6 circular holes. Later vehicles were fitted with a wheel with 6 spokes. There are 2 return rollers. In all, the suspension system is flimsy and vulnerable. This is compensated by limiting the official maximum speed to 30 km per hour. Although the combination of a weight of just 2.64 metric tons with an engine power of 38 horsepower would allow for a higher speed, during testing 36 km per hour. was attainable. This also reduces the chance of accidents while towing the trailer. Fully loaded, the road speed is reduced to 25 km per hour, the cross-country speed to 10 km per hour. The wading capacity is 30 cm, the trench crossing capacity 120 cm. The turning circle is 3 meters. A slope of 50% can be climbed. The value of the Chenillette as an armored fighting vehicle was limited. In French service, the Model 31 carried no armament, although some later vehicles had attachment points for a removable AA machine gun to be fitted, but this had to be operated from outside the vehicle in an awkward crouched position due to its low height. For the crew to use personal weapons through the hatches while sitting inside the hull was highly impractical. Consideration had been given to arming it with a machine gun, but the Direction de l'Infanterie feared that if such a weapon were mounted, the UE would be misused as a light tank rather than being dedicated to its correct tactical resupply role. Likewise, the armor protection was minimal. The vertical plates had a thickness of 9 mm. The other plates, all riveted, were 6 mm thick, just enough to stop normal rifle bullets and shell fragments. Development of the Renault UE2. From 1935, in reaction to the German rearmament, the French infantry embarked on a major expansion and modernization program. Part of this was the project to replace the Chenillette Model 31 with an improved type, which however should remain within the weight limit of the earlier vehicle of 2.6 metric tons. Interest from the side of the French industry was high, and during 1937 5 companies proposed prototypes: Lorraine, Hotchkiss, Foucault-Berlier and Renault. Lorraine de Dietrich, a company specialized in locomotive construction, presented a tractor and trailer to the Commission de Vincennes on 23 April 1937. The prototype was tested between 28 April and 10 June. Though at 4 tons heavier than specified, the type is approved by the Commission on 8 July, with the period of testing extended to 23 August. Compared to the Model 31, the Lorraine Chenillette is much more a dedicated supply vehicle, the larger size of which allows for a superior carrying capacity, crew comfort and range, while its suspension with 2 bogies and 4 large road wheels ensures a good tactical mobility. On 8 September the Commission concludes that there are no objections to series production. Already the prototype had on 25 August been presented to the Commission de l'Infanterie at Mourmelon for tactical evaluation. Clearly the infantry favored this type, but eventually it was decided to use all production capacity for the longer Lorraine 37L. As there was a lack of heavier movers, a first order of 100 made early 1939 was in September changed into one for the other type. On 3 November 1937 Hotchkiss presented the prototype of a tractor, on 10 December of a trailer. On both elements however the manufacturer had not done any testing, the vehicles having been transported to Vincennes as soon as they were finished. Therefore, the Commission delayed its trials until 27 December to allow Hotchkiss to make final adjustments on the base area. The tractor was tested until 10 February 1938. The type closely resembled the general outline of the Renault UE. The main difference was the presence of 2 bins instead of one, able to tilt sideways, positioned over the back of the mudguards. This doubled the carrying capacity. Instead of the small hoods, 2 very large armored covers, retractable to the back, served as both entrance hatch and visor. The engine, differential and steering system were judged to be acceptable. The suspension system, however, was considered to be too weak. not having been reinforced to match the larger cargo mass to avoid surpassing the specified total weight. It consisted of two bogies, each with two small road wheels, sprung by narrow horizontal coil springs. A large tension wheel trailed on the ground, which lowered ground pressure to compensate for the larger weight of the bins but also increased track resistance and vibration. The cross-country speed was just 15 km per hour. As even during testing when fully loaded entire bogies collapsed, the prototype was rejected. The Fugger Aircraft Company submitted a prototype tractor and trailer on the 2nd of February 1939. It was tested until the 8th of May. This vehicle also closely resembled the Renault UE, but had a higher roof, making hoods unnecessary and enlarging the cargo space. Its suspension had two bogies per side with each two road wheels, sprung by leaf springs. The type, its submission too late because a choice had already been made for a rivaling type, was rejected because its mechanical parts were not easily accessible and the vibration level was too high. Berlier obtained an order for a prototype on the 4th of December 1936. A tractor and trailer were however only presented to the Commission de Vincennes on 6 March 1939, testing starting immediately. The type again resembled the Renault UE but was somewhat higher. It had three bogies per side with two road wheels each, sprung by horizontal coil springs. The weight was 3.05 metric tons, its stop speed 36 km per hour, the range 143 km. The first report of the Commission was favorable and trials are resumed on the 24th of April, lasting till the 20th of May. It transpired that the tractor could attain a top speed of 30 km per hour even when pulling the trailer. The Commission concluded on the 8th of June that the Berlier Chenillette was superior to the Renault UE in speed, range and mechanical reliability and saw no objection against taking it into production. This however was eventually rejected by the Army in order to concentrate all production facilities into a single type, which had already replaced the UE, the UE2. Renault had been further developing the Renault UE from 1931 onwards. Some features had been introduced to the production series, some expressed into new prototypes, others had remained mere paper projects. Renault always strongly lobbied to attain official, and thus financed, state orders for his development projects, and on the 20th of December 1934 he had managed to obtain one for an improved Renault UE, the Renault UE2. One by one during 1935 and 1936 improved components were submitted to the Commission de Vincennes to be tested and modified, according to the wishes of the Army. These included reinforced pistons, a new gearbox with 4 speeds forward and 1 reverse, a reinforced differential, longer front mud guards of which the back part bent upwards to form a continuous plane with the glacis, a semi-automatic attachment system for the trailer and a nightlight at the left back of the vehicle. These changes were not very fundamental. The Commission was not even aware this was supposed to end in a new type, but Renault used this very fact as an argument to select the UE2 as the replacement vehicle. The improvements could be introduced without interrupting production, whereas the switch to a completely different design might cause a fatal delay in the rearmament process. This proved to be a decisive consideration for the Army. In November 1937 a choice was made for the Renault UE2 to become the type for mass production. The Chenillette, a ravitaillement infantry model 1937R. An order was placed with AMX, the nationalized former Renault factory, on the 3rd of December. Other manufacturers were employed also. In fact, Fugger had already obtained an order on the 2nd of December. Berlier would be given one on the 16th of March 1938. These manufacturers, however, did not immediately take the Model 37 into production. They in fact made the Model 31 to complete the first production batches only in the summer of 1939, when the French economy went into full gear to prepare for increased war production. Was the gradual transition to the UE2 really made, though some new features, such as the mudguards, appear already in the summer of 1936. From the summer of 1937, instead of the original Restore headlights, the armored type of Guichet was fitted. The Army did not discern between the two UE types and eventually in the statistics subsumed all Chenillettes received under the denominator Model 31. On 1 September 1939-2848, Renault UEs of both models had been manufactured. In 1940, a production of 300 vehicles per month was aimed at. To ensure such a high output, Renault bought a sub-factory at Pontlieue to start another UE2 assembly line there. On 1 April 1940, AMX had built 1080 Renault UE2s, Fougueux 260 and Berlier 310. In May, monthly deliveries reached the total number of 509, made possible by emptying the factory material stocks. On 1 June 4977 Renault Chenillettes of both models had been built, 4,557 delivered. Total production destined for France was about 5,148, on the assumption that about 2,300 vehicles had been produced after the 1st of September. In the 70s it was still assumed that the production realized before December 1937, mistakenly equated to that of the Model 31, was not included in this number. Total production was thus overestimated at about 6,200. Armed Renault Chenillettes. In the early 1930s, the French cavalry was in need of a small scouting vehicle. On 27 November 1931, the Section Technique de la Cavalerie asked Renault to rebuild one of his 6 Chenillette prototypes into an armed tank kit. Prototype N degree 77,982 was therefore turned into a automitrailleuse léger de contact tout-terrain in the winter of 1932, by being fitted with a small rectangular superstructure holding in its front a ball mount with machine gun to be operated by the commander. The hood was placed on top of it. This type was rejected by the cavalry for being too slow. Further developments would, however, result in the Amra 33 light cavalry tank, of which the Renault UE was the direct ancestor. Renault was always very intent on procuring foreign orders, but generally without much success. To improve the attractiveness of his Renault UE, he also offered a version with a machine gun. In March 1936, the government of China placed an order for 10 Renault UEs armed with machine guns, together with 12 Renault ZB tanks, though the tanks eventually reached China in 1940. The Chenillettes were held up in Haiphong from 1938 because France gave in to Japanese pressure. They appear to have been confiscated in 1940 by the French authorities of Indochina. Including these export vehicles, total French Renault UE production was thus about 5,158. During the Battle of France, in May 1940, the swiftly deteriorating situation led to an order being issued to arm all available tracked chassis and send them to the front. This included the available FD-17 hulls from which the turret had been removed to turn them into utility vehicles, the Renault ZT4s that had not yet received the turrets, and also the Renault UE Model 37s produced from the armoured moment. On the 25th of May, the French Infantry requested that Renault produce a prototype on the lines of his Chinese UEs, with a machine gun-armed superstructure. Another existing 200 vehicles were to be refitted with a simpler external Mach 31 rifle machine gun mount. It is unknown how many of both types were in fact built or modified. At least one vehicle with a superstructure is still extant. On the 31st of May, for trial purposes, a 25mm Hotchkiss gun was fitted on a single vehicle. This led to an order on the 10th of June for 150 of such tank destroyers. None were produced. Chenillette Malaxatip UE. In 1937, Romania, then still a French ally, bought about 10 UEs and obtained a license to build the Renault UE. Late 1939, production started, in the Malaxa factory in Bucharest, of the Chenillette Malaxatip UE, using many components delivered by the French AMX factory. The Romanian UEs are externally identical to the French-built UE2. During the Legionnaire Rebellion, the Iron Guard acquired two vehicles, but little is known about the service. It had been intended to produce 300 tractors, but in March 1941, after 126 vehicles had been built, production had to end due to a lack of French-supplied parts. Germany then delivered 50 captured Renault UEs to Romania. In the Romanian army, the type was deployed in the anti-tank companies, towing the 47mm Schneider Model 1936, a heavier gun than in the French army, which had considered the Renault UE to be much too light to move guns of this caliber, and as a munition and fuel carrier in the motorized cavalry regiments. After 1943, of the 50 surviving vehicles, 33 were used for training, 17 were from January 1944 until March rebuilt by the Malaxa factory, which reinforced them to allow them to tow the even heavier German 50mm L-60 anti-tank gun. The Romanian vehicles, including the 10 imported, bring the total Renault UE production to about 5,294.